Okay, so today's slight change. I'm with Mark Crossfield, who is not a teacher or an ex-teacher even. So, Mark, would you like to tell us what you do?
Certainly. Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Crossfield. I'm a career coach. So I help people to love their job and have a great career. And I particularly help people in mid-career, including teachers as well on occasion.
Right, okay. But you haven't always done this. So let's just have a quick whiz through your career prior to you setting up your own business, because I think it's always valid to see how even people who weren't teachers, how they transitioned out of their original role or roles, because I believe you've been through several incarnations. So we'll have a talk about how you did that, your motivation for each move, and how you developed yourself to the point where you felt that you could set yourself up as what you do now. So we've known each other since at the University of Salford. So lost sight of you at graduation. Tell me what you did.
Yeah. Let's pick up from graduation, shall we? A few years back. So I studied civil engineering at university, and like all vocational degrees, I ended up going into civil engineering. So I actually got a graduate role at Lancashire County Council. So I worked there as a graduate civil engineer, and then I progressed within the profession. I became a chartered civil engineer, and I moved to a different organisation, still another local authority, and I stayed in local government for 18 years actually. No, more than that. So 28 years actually. So I was with Lancashire 10 years, and actually moved to Wigan Council for 18 years. So 28 years in local government. And it started out with civil engineering and the technical side of it, project management, some big projects, particularly at Lancashire. And then it moved more to management, leadership type roles, operational management at the end. So I had quite a varied career working for those two organisations, and I did change roles quite a bit within those 28 years because I was never really happy where I was. So I was always trying to find something else that I wanted to do within the organisation. So I'd seek out a different team to manage, or a different project to deliver, or a different part of the organisation to run. So I did mix it up as much as I could, because I wasn't happy where I was. And this is obviously a theme for your channel, Melanie. And it got to the point where I actually was on a trip to New York with my wife, and I had what I referred to as my Manhattan moment. I was actually walking along the streets of Manhattan, first time to New York, loved the place, and I was really happy. I felt really happy. And it just occurred to me that it was the first time that I'd felt happy in a long time. And it was almost like the penny dropped for me. I thought, I can't remember feeling this happy for a long time. And the main reason for that is the work I'm doing. So I had this insight that I no longer wanted to carry on working where I was. I wanted to leave. So I came back from New York, had a conversation with my manager about leaving the organization, how that might happen. We came to an arrangement where I was able to leave with something at the end of it, which was good. And within a year, I'd left the organization. And to be honest, I hadn't fully decided what I was going to do. And
right, that was
so is it
question.
Yeah, it was a brave move because I'd not fully decided what I wanted to do. One of the things I'd done whilst I was at Wigan was I'd become qualified as a coach. So I'd done some coaching training. I'd done some mentoring and coaching within the organisation. So I'd done some coaching at Wigan. Really enjoyed it.
So what do you mean? What do you mean by coaching in that context then? Because people might not understand what that means. I didn't know what coaches were while I was still teaching. That was a revelation to me when I started meeting coaches.
The coaching conversations I was having were helping people to perform better at work. So there's some performance coaching initially. So it was helping people to improve at work, enjoy the role better, and to seek other opportunities within the organization that might better suit their skills and their interests. So it was a conversation, really, helping them to understand themselves better and enjoy the role more, essentially. And I love the idea that having a conversation with somebody, a guided conversation with somebody, can really unlock the potential and the self-knowledge to a point where they then can take action in their career, which is going to get them to a better place. So I sort of really got excited about the whole coaching concept. And when I left Wigan, even though I'd not really got an idea what I was going to be doing, I did think actually that coaching probably was something that I would like to have a go at. And I had another insight, really, because I'd spent years trying to work out what I wanted to do, but I couldn't really find anybody to help me. So I recognized that people need support in changing their careers. And I wanted to help people like me, so people in the mid-career that have got a lot of buy-in in terms of, they put a lot of effort into getting where they got to. I was in a good job, but it wasn't a good job for me. And getting out of that situation is difficult. So I wanted to help people just like me. So that's why I decided to set myself up as a independent career coach.
Right. Okay. So did you have to do any more training to specialize in a particular kind of coaching, or is a coaching qualification quite transferable across whatever kind of coaching you want to do?
Coaching is pretty unregulated. It is fair to say there is no requirement to have a qualification. However, best practice is that you are qualified, and I certainly wanted to be a qualified coach. So I'd got my qualifications as a performance coach early on, but then I realized if I wanted to be a career coach, then I would have to get some further qualifications. So I trained as a career coach. So I got some career coaching qualifications. And then there is an accreditation process as well. So most coaches are not accredited. I decided that I wanted to be accredited. The accreditation process is one where you have to meet certain requirements in terms of your educational background. You have to go through an assessment of you as a career coach. You have to log a number of hours of working in the industry, and you have to, like I say, complete a submission laying out how you would deal with certain situations and how you would behave ethically. And you have to be sponsored. You have to have a coach supervisor. So there's lots of things you need to have in place to be accredited. But I wanted to set myself up in the right way so that I could help as many people as possible, but give them the confidence that they were being well looked after in by working with me.
Yeah, right. Okay. So generally speaking, people who come to you, how far along the path are they? Do they know what they want to do but don't know how to go about it, or don't even know what they want to do? Can you work with both of those kinds of people?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to work with different people at different stages of the career. I mean, my ideal client is someone that is in mid-career, that is stuck and have no idea what they want to do next. That is the perfect person for me. But I do work with people at various stages of their career, but most probably are in that stuck position in mid-career. They've got a lot of, they've bought into a lot of the role. They've got qualifications. They've got the reputation. They might have the identity of that person and that role, and they don't know what to do to change that and how to get out of that situation. Very similar, actually, to many of the teachers that you talk to, Melanie. And I have worked with teachers actually as well and supported them in changing their career from teaching to something else.
So let's talk about how you can help teachers then. What do you think are the main things that a teacher could bring to the table? What are the advantages of them having done teacher training and having taught for however long they've taught for, what skills does that give them? Transferable skills, life skills, whatever else that gives you something to work with?
Yeah. Well, if I can just back up just a little bit. So one of the just in terms of the context. So the things I tend to work with are people's interests or things that they're interested in, the values or things that are important to them. You know, for example, flexible working might be a value. So I work at what's really important to them, and then what I call the motivated skills. So the motivated skills are a combination of the things that you're good at, the skills you're really good at, but the skills you like using. So give you an example of that. A teacher might have good teaching skills. They might be really highly proficient in teaching, but they don't particularly like using that skill. And therefore, that wouldn't necessarily be a motivated skill for them. So I'd be working with them to work out where is the skill level with a list of skills we work through, and which ones do you enjoy using most. And what tends to come out is there's normally a dozen or so really strong motivated skills that they're very good at and they like using. And we use that as a basis of what might be next for them in their career, because those motivated skills are crucial, really. You take those with you. Those are yours to keep. You put them in your bag and you take them to your next career or your next job. So there's quite a bit of work to work out what those motivated skills are. Once they're identified, normally the client becomes a lot more confident because they can recognize, well, this identity of being a teacher isn't something which is going to limit me. I've actually got a lot more to offer the world. And here are the skills that I can deploy in different careers and in different roles.
Right, yeah. So if a teacher came to you, typically, let's just take, a John Doe, Jane Doe kind of example of a teacher. If they came to you and said, right, I've been teaching for whatever, 15 years or whatever, and I want to get out, what's the process? How long would they work with you for? Does that vary? And what's the process that they would go through with you to arrive at the point where maybe they're putting in an application for alternative employment, or even thinking about setting up their own business?
Yeah, it does vary. I tend to package up sessions in either 5 or 6 sessions. Normally tends to be enough to get people to a point where they're clear about the next step. They might not have applied for the jobs, but they're clear about what those next steps are. Some people I spend longer with because it takes longer for them to get there. Some people can do it in less time than that. Some people, we only need 4 sessions, and actually they've managed to work out what's next for them, and they've almost made that first leap. They've applied for jobs before we've even finished our work together. So it does depend on the individual. Vocational clients are harder to work with because obviously there are more steps moving them out from where they are to where they might want to get to, because of course quite often they're not sure where they want to get to. So the first step is a step of self-discovery, so helping them to understand themselves better. That is the first point, really, because people have lost touch with what they're interested in, what's important to them, what they're good at, the strengths. They've forgotten all that stuff. All they're thinking about is the job and the things they do on a daily basis. They don't have that holistic view of themselves anymore. They've lost that. It's sad, actually, to see that. And quite often, I talk to people about, what did you enjoy doing at school? What hobbies did you enjoy doing when you were in your teenage years? What clubs did you used to be a member of? So taking them back again before they started working to get them to reignite with their interests and the things that genuinely they're drawn towards, because they're clues that lead to new beginnings in their career.
Right. And do you sort of further on in the process then, do you offer support with the actual job application process, with the covering letters, with the CVs, with interview techniques?
Yeah. So the few steps really. I mean, one is the sort of the idea generation, if you like. So sort of getting unstuck and coming up with some options. That is the first step, if you like. Then there's the application process. So if identifying, what they need to do to sort of get a job in a new organization. So like you say, job applications, interview technique, particularly strong at preparing people for interviews. So I have some really good tips to get people succeed in the interview where perhaps they failed in the past. And that can be really helpful for people to show up with so much confidence that, they don't always succeed, but there's a pretty good chance they will succeed. And then the final one is making the leap. So actually that first few months in the new job can be difficult because it's new, it's a new organization, and helping them to embed in the organization and make a success of the role depends really on making a good start. So I help people to make a really strong start in the new role as well. So when you put those three things together, it really does give people the confidence to go from being stuck in a position with no idea what's next to actually performing in an organization or working for themselves even, and feeling really happy and delighted with the transition.
Yeah, because I know one thing that put me off moving out of teaching was the whole applying for other jobs thing, and interviews.
It's funny what the things that stop people leaving the organization, they're not rational sometimes. I mean, that probably is a rational one because there is a bit of an element of challenge there, isn't there? People worry about the leaving speech, and people stay in their organization because they don't want to have a leaving bash or some presentation where they're going to be expected to give a little speech. Now, you have to believe me on this. I've spoken to a few people that have told me that is one of their main concerns. They don't want to leave because of that. They're almost locked in because of the fear of putting the head above the parapet and saying that I don't want to work here anymore. I want out. It's almost that sort of feeling like a traitor, not wanting to leave the organization.
Yeah.
And so it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, that's an odd one. I haven't heard of that before, but I can believe it. Because funnily enough, my husband was a teacher as well, and at the same school as me. That's where we met. But when he left, he actually bolted from the presentation. He couldn't face it. And I actually had to stand up and accept the presentation in his name and say a few words. So yeah, it is intimidating for some people. Yeah, and I didn't actually have one in the end because I was off ill. So, yeah. Anyway, so moving on. What was I going to ask you next? Forgotten.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, you can.
And just
Please
say
fill
something
the embarrassing void.
Which might be helpful. And that is that career change is often about identity change. So often we have the identity of being a teacher or of being someone that works in a local authority as a manager or a civil engineer. We often have this identity, and it pins us to where we are. It keeps us stuck where we are. So career change is about changing identity, and identity change often isn't instant. In fact, it probably never is instant, really. You have to do things to make the identity change. You have to move. You have to get movement. You have to do things, and the identity will definitely change. So you can't think your way into a new career, is what I'm trying to say. And taking action, whatever action that might be, really does get you moving towards options that then become interesting for you. And as you move nearer those options, other options suddenly pop up and they're more interesting. So you end up going down a different path. And before you realize it, your identity's changed from being one thing to being something else, or it's on the way to being something else. So that is a key part of, if you speak to any career expert, they will say that it is about helping you to change your view of yourself and your understanding of who you are. So I know it's quite philosophical, but it's important when it comes to career change to recognize that we're working at the identity level.
Yeah, I can see that, seeing yourself in a new role. Yeah. Would you say that there's a typical sector or job that you've helped teachers to move into, or has it been very varied?
It is varied. Some the ed tech sector is an area that some teachers are showing interest in, because obviously they can work for an organization where education is still something that's a fundamental part of what the organization is doing, but they've got a brain which is wired up for tech and apps and new technology. Then that can be a marriage that actually gets them out of where they're doing with teaching into something which is much more enjoyable. So that can be one route. Civil service is another area actually that people often look at when they're looking at options away from teaching, because the civil service, there's so many departments, and not just the ones that are responsible for education. There are others as well that, the type of role that you've had in teaching, it lends itself to a lot of the positions in the public sector, and civil service in particular. So that is an area where people look at. Other therapy is another area that people look at. So like counselling, for example, coaching is another area that people look at. So it does vary from individual to individual, and it does depend. Everyone's different, and when you peel back who they are and what really interests them and what skills they've got, there are a lot of options that become available.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And here we're just talking about other employment options. Never mind, then you've got the whole raft of options for self-employment, obviously, in the freelancer life.
Yeah. Self-employment is an interesting one, because with most occupations, if you're looking at some self-employed role, quite often you can actually start something on the side. So, I could have started doing a little bit of coaching on the side. In fact, at one point I did do that. You could, do a little bit of web design on the side. So there's lots of things you can do on the side to give you some interest. In fact, now I come to think of it, there's quite a few things that I did on the side. So I had an eBay shop. I forgot about this actually. So I set myself up as an eBay seller. So selling stuff on eBay. I thought, well, maybe that's something I should do. Sort of enjoyed it, but I thought I don't really enjoy going to the post office and all the packaging and all that side of it. So I discounted that one. I actually looked at moving into more of like project management. So I considered that consultancy. So working as like a management consultant type role. I looked at that. So I did try quite a few things actually that might be interesting. So certainly there are things you can have a go at without leaving your job, just to give you some idea of what it might be like.
Yeah, because often finding the things that you don't want to do is just as valid as finding the thing that you do want to do. And in either case, you'll never know if you don't try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, particularly because the way that careers are presented to us, in a way, it is false. A lot of the information we get. I often think about the armed forces, for example. It does make it look like it's a weekend adventure when you look at those armed forces advertisements on TV, and I can't imagine it's anything like that. Teaching is another example. We're often given the impression, to a certain extent, that you're a hero and a heroine when you go into teaching.
Oh, don't get me started on those get into teaching adverts. No, that's a rabbit hole you don't want me to disappear down, because I can, oh, dear me. Anyway, right. So if you had to give serving current teachers some advice about what they should do if they're getting itchy feet, well, more than itchy feet, they desperately need to get out. What advice from your professional point of view would you give them?
Yeah. Well, at first, I think I'd encourage them to reflect on the mindset, really. Let's start there, because it is about your mindset when you start thinking about options. And you've got to think about, first of all, your career is your responsibility. So there's a responsibility mindset. That's really important. You've got to take responsibility for it. Nobody else is going to take responsibility for your career. Nobody. Not your partner, not your family members, nobody. It's you. You're the person that's got to take responsibility. Now, I know it seems obvious, but some people don't really take responsibility for the career. So I am pointing it out.
Mm.
The second thing is that possibility, the idea that better things, other things, more exciting things are possible for you is something that you have to really get your head around. That quite often we don't think there's nothing for me. This is what I'm stuck with. Other people can change career, but I can't. You have to lose that thinking, and you have to really get your head around change is possible for me. Other people have changed career. Other people have left teaching to have great other jobs and careers. So if they can do it, so can I. So having that possibility mindset is really important. So I think that the two things I would say in terms of mindset. I would say, because I always like to, when I first started out in career coaching, I would always encourage people to quickly look at options away from the current situation. We'll come on to that in a second. But I would encourage people just to have a look around them to see whether there are options that are not too far from where they're currently working. So, for example, is there a different role they could take? Can they do a different teaching role, for example? Is there a different position they could take in the school? Or indeed, is there a different school they could work at? So make sure that you're not abandoning teaching too early if there is genuinely an option for you to find fulfillment somewhere else in teaching. Now, I know that might not be the case, but I think it is worth just checking that to make sure that so at least you can say to yourself, hand on heart, and have the conversation with your partner. I have explored the options of staying within teaching, but I feel actually that I need to leave teaching because it's, I'm not enjoying it. It's making me miserable. Life's too short. You spend too many hours at work. I need to find something else. So having done that, then it's a case of really starting to think about options and ideas, really. So when you start thinking about options and ideas, there's two things that come into play here. One is understanding yourself better, and the second is understanding what's out there better. Most of us don't have much idea on either of those things. So if you're somebody that doesn't really understand yourself and you don't know what's out there, it's almost like you're blind to all the options that are available to you. Yeah. So the first step is understand yourself better. So try and think about your interests. What are you interested in? When you go to a bookshop, which direction do you go in? What sort of books do you buy? What magazines do you read? What do you do at the weekend? What do you spend your time doing? What do you like talking about? So try and find the things that you're interested in or could be interested in. So get curious about yourself. Have a look at your skills. So this can be easier if it's done with someone to help you to do this process. But have a think about what the skills you like using at work, in your teaching, what you're good at and what you like doing. So those are important to grasp, because they're going to be really important for whatever's next. But also think about your values. So what's important to you? Is it important that you have flexibility? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to work with young people still, or do you want to work with adults, or do you want a job that has travel? So think about what is important about what's next. That will throw up a lot of sort of things to work with, and then you can then start turning your attention to what's out there. Now, what I wouldn't suggest people do is just sign up for Indeed and just, get bombarded by loads of emails like, oh, this will be good, I'll
Yeah.
apply for this, oh, that'll be good. Because ultimately, those are just jobs that are currently available now. They may or may not be interesting to you, but it's Indeed pushing things to you rather than you thinking about what's important to you first. So I would think about what's yourself first, but then start to think about the market. So, there's lots of ways you can understand the market better. So there's, if you Google career and job families, it'll list you all the job families that exist. There's, 20 or 30. Each of these industries or job sectors, it breaks down the types of jobs that might be in each of those. Have a look and see, have a look at those descriptions, see which ones you're drawn to, what are you interested in, and maybe have a look at some of those, Google around a little bit and find out how much money do they pay, what is the job like, what sort of responsibilities do you have. Try and be an explorer of what might be out there by doing a bit of detective work. Start with the job families, then the roles of the job families, and then try and find individual examples and see if they sound interesting or not. If they sound interesting, reach out to people and try and have a conversation. Hey, I heard you're a web designer. Can I have a conversation about what you do, because I might be interested in sort of learning more about the profession. Most people, are quite happy to talk about what they do and help you if you approach them the right way. So that's how I would say, the best way of getting started, really, in terms of the planning and the thinking about the steps to looking at the career, what might be next. Teachers are good at time management, lesson management, planning, and organization. So think about it as a little project that you're doing on the side. So you set aside some time each week where you're investigating the different options, and that will give you something to work with. That'll get you started.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant advice. Rather than thinking that you've got to have a fully formed idea in your head, otherwise it's not going to happen. Yeah, that's great advice, Mark. Thank you very much. And finally, where can we find you?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn as you are, Melanie. So you can find me there. If you just Google me, you'll be able to find me. My company's Bravo Coaching. Bravo Coaching. So if you Google Bravo Coaching, you'll find out what I can do and what I offer. And just have a look on there. And if you want a conversation, have a chat about your career, I do like free discovery chats, and quite often I can help people on discovery calls, to be honest, to work out what might be next in terms of the planning stages of changing career. So just reach out to me if you want a conversation.
Right, that's great, Mark. Thank you so much for giving up your time this morning and sharing with us your expertise and how you can help. I think that's given, certainly, if I had heard you say all that 4 years ago, I think before I started seriously thinking about getting out, then it would have helped me a lot. So thank you very much. Okay, bye.
No, thank you for inviting me along. Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah.